The April 25th, 2023 regular council meeting is called to order at 4:03. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Kennington.
Second.
Councillor Mafty. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. The first set of minutes for approval today are from the April 11th, 2023 regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare.
Second.
Councillor Kennington. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. The second set of minutes for approval today are from the April 13th, 2023 special council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson.
Second.
Councillor Kennington. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Our delegation this afternoon is from Tourism Ucluelet. Ms. Dice Norman, the floor is yours. Please try to limit your presentation to 10 minutes. And welcome. She laughs. Can you just check that your microphone is on? On the back, on the front, on the side.
Can I just say that it's the end of the day today? Is that it? Is that my excuse?
That sounds much better.
Okay.
Sorry,
great.
could you start again?
Yes, of course, no problem. Sorry. Well, just to recap, I'd just like to thank your worship and council for allowing me to present today and just give a brief overview of Tourism Ucluelet as an organization to the new council members, as well as what we've done over the last year, as well as where we're headed. So a little bit of a background. So who is Tourism Ucluelet and what's our role in the community? Tourism Ucluelet is a destination management organization. We have been around since 2009. We started as a subcommittee at the Chamber of Commerce, and over time we became our own association in 2015, and as of June 1st this year, we will be a fully standalone organization receiving funding directly from the province, and we'll be working in partnership with the district moving forward. Part of our roles and responsibilities as an organization are to promote economic activity within the community through the tourism sector, as well as support the district and other societies within the community on education of consumers and visitors, as well as locals to the area. With the changes that happened last year, Tourism Ucluelet redevised itself and its purpose statement. as well as one of our guiding principles of how we're going to operate as an organization moving forward. And this particular statement came forward during a strategic planning session with the board of directors 2 years ago. And so part of our goals are by 2028 that Tourism Ucluelet will lead Ucluelet's vibrant and sustainable tourism industry through industry collaboration, responsible and authentic promotion, visitor and community education, support, and community priorities and accountability in our operations. A little bit of a recap as to what we have done last year. As an organization, we receive funding through the Municipal Regional District Tax, which is also referred to as the MRDT or hotel tax. And as of June 1st, it will be increasing to 3%. The voting stakeholders within the within the district of Ucluelet, which are normally businesses or accommodation providers that have 4 units or more, vote on to continue collecting the tax as well as the increase, as it is a consumer tax and not a provincially mandated tax similar to the PST. And during that renewal process, which takes place every 5 years, the board, as well as the voting stakeholders, agreed that it was time for Tourism Ucluelet to shift to more of a management focus instead of purely economic driving and marketing as we had done in the past. And part of the mandates that came from the renewal also were part of our came from the tourism master plan. And again, we always ended up working with the District of Ucluelet as well as the Chamber of Commerce just to see where our next 5 years would lead us. Some of the work that we had done over the last year, working with Ms. Fortune as well as Mr. Lawrence, was completing the Tourism Master Plan, which provided a framework for the next 10 years of where tourism will head within the community. During that process, we interviewed I think we received feedback from over 260 community members, providing feedback as to what that would look like, along with a substantial amount of sector meetings and a very diverse group of our oversight committee as well, providing feedback throughout the process. So that particular document also fed into our 5-year renewal document as well. Some of the projects that we had worked on over the last year were redirecting our involvement in the Destination BC Iconic strategy, which is a provincial dispersion strategy for tourists around the province. We have requested to be pushed back a little bit further as dispersion and post-COVID recovery is important everywhere across the province, but we were not as greatly impacted as other areas of the province were, which is why that footnote is up there. The board went through a great deal of board training last year as well, and part of their training was to shift from a full strategy to move away from an operational board and move more in towards strategy and governance. We'd been trying to do that over the last few years, but the board really redirected its focus and has started to look at other priorities around sustainability, community support, as well as additional stakeholder and business development that helps our businesses maintain growth and stability long term. We were also created our sustainability. We started out with our sustainability program, and Salty the Sea Otter was a product of that particular project. Salty came from actually the Tourism Master Plan engagement process. We had been told that the community understood the value of tourism, and we knew that we didn't need to re-educate the community on why the tourism sector is important to the community of Ucluelet and surrounding areas. But one of the resounding feedbacks that we did receive from the community is that they wanted to see Tourism Ucluelet participate more in active education with visitors to the area on maintaining and helping us preserve where it is that we live. And while we had been doing that in the past, it's become more of a forefront of our focus. As a side note, I ended up, I was just on a sustainability action planning call this afternoon, and it was about laying out how we integrate the UN SDGs into everything that we do and operate through our organization. So over the next 8 weeks, our sustainability committee will actually be using the framework that was given to us to see what we've already done, and then how we can utilize those sustainability goals and integrate them into our 5-year plan as well as into the tourism master plan. So then that becomes the overarching guidance for how we operate within the community, what we're doing as an organization, the programs that we can support within the community as well, and so the sustainability and education piece was something that had started off last year, and Salty is one fragment of that because it is a marketing campaign to educate visitors when they come to the West Coast, and we had felt that using Salty was far more humor and a little bitty cheekiness was a better way of getting a message across than just saying, please don't do this when you come here. As you can see, we also had the ambassador program on there and the back road camping, which we worked in conjunction with all the other organizations on the West Coast to help sort of corral all of the back road camping that was going on, and trying to find real solutions to help mitigate that. And iOverlander was one of those. We contacted the app developer itself and asked them to actually start blocking the areas out here on the West Coast. That has a similar system set up to Bylaw, where you can just file a complaint and they self-mitigate and manage that, so it's complaint driven. So those were one of the things that we helped facilitate and then pass the tools on to the Guardian program, so they would be able to anybody can actually go on there and monitor it. It's not just to one particular area. During the Tourism Master Plan program, this was the vision statement that had come out that would also add to that also informed our 5-year renewal program. And this was, again, in conjunction with the district that we worked through these plans that would help inform not just the economic component, but also just the needs of the community as well. As well as over the 10 years, these were the 5 focus areas that came out from participating with our partners, as well as focusing on the feedback that we received from the residents within the community. And just one of the projects that we had the pleasure of working on last year, Barbara Schramm was a huge help in helping us devise this map, and it really was a collaborative approach. Ms. Fortune was very helpful in helping this, as well as Dave Toval from Parks Canada, providing input, as well as all of the nations that you see on this board. We received some funding to create a gateway signage to participate in a gateway signage program, and this was a result of some funding that we had received from 4VI, and it's at the visitor center right now. So it is a giant welcome map that shows all the communities and nations and peoples that reside on the West Coast. And it's an information piece to have visitors understand where they're coming to and who lives in the area. So this was just one of our projects that we completed last year. Oh, sorry. And then again, our lovely Salty. So these were some of our digital campaigns that we sent out. We have some posters that will be going out to to businesses around town for this summer, as well as some flat sheets to share with visitors so all the businesses and vacation rentals, anybody can have them within their properties, just sharing some of the responsible travel messaging that we have. Some of the documents that have been produced from this that were just sent out recently now get sent out with every single reservation that's made. So we ask businesses to attach that. So consumers, when they're going through their reservation guide, they have all the information that they need when they come to the area.
Quick question, Denise.
Yes.
Is Salty coming back this year with new things?
Not new things, but Salty will be far more visible this year. So last year, just with the timing, we got to sprinkle a little bit of that out, but he's coming back in full force this summer to really reiterate a lot of those, a lot of the messaging that we had done. We had a really great response from it. A lot of people just really loved the humor and the cheekiness behind it. And, the intent of that sort of messaging is to be disruptive and to make people at least pause long enough in a very digital and disruptive world to make them at least slow down enough to think. And so we have those ads running locally here in town, as well as we're looking at some other inbound flight prospects for when people are coming to the island this summer. So they may not be here, but at least the messaging itself will kind of just set a general tone of how to be a good person on the island, even if they don't make it out this far. So we're still looking at some of that, but it really is to kind of hammer that message home. I know, he's adorable. So So a few of our goals for this year and moving forward. Obviously, I had mentioned that we have started a sustainability committee. Our first board meeting is tomorrow after our AGM, where Mary McEwen will become a formal board member of ours. And so with that, we have 3 committees that we're looking at. So the Sustainability Committee, which will be an ongoing one, as well as a Visitor Services Task Force to address the Visitor Center, as well as what that program looks like moving forward, and if we can move it into a more of a dynamic era, just because we know that there's a lot of businesses in town that are impacted by constant questions. So we're just trying to tweak that a little bit and get some better understanding of the needs of the businesses in town. We're going to continue to work on professional development. We will be funding the ambassador program again this year, and just to see what, obviously to fund the in-person portion, as well as hopefully see if we can also create a bit of a digital component as well for staff that are coming in outside of the time frame for the in-person component. But it is a very valuable program for us, as well as the stakeholders in town. And so we're hoping to really spread that information out and get more frontline staff engaged, because we feel that when you have staff singing from the same song sheet and education and knowledge of the area, you're sending the same message to the consumer that's coming to the area for the first time, and it really helps just cement and remind them of where it is that they're visiting. We've sent out photography and brand guidelines to a lot of our businesses this year. And again, it's to help with our responsible travel messaging, what's acceptable photography, what isn't. So in close proximity to wildlife, as well as standing on the rocks. So we're really trying to integrate CoSmart and Adventure Smart into what we are prepared to share and what is acceptable from, like, if businesses want to participate with us, then these are the parameters in which that we'll be happy to reshare and work with them. But it's to really get that message out of being respectful to the area, being safe in the area, because what was evident during COVID is that we recognized how strapped our first responders were and how impacted even the smallest of errors would, the domino effect that created on our first responders. And it wasn't just fire and ambulance, it was also at the hospital. And so we took a lot of those learnings during COVID and really informed what our responsible travel messaging would look like moving forward. We're also going to be starting up our Tourism Master Plan Committee. And again, we've been asked about more research, and then of course continuing to support the affordable housing program through the MRDT that's collected through the vacation rentals here in town. And a lot of the things that we look at, these are really our reminding images as to why we want to really shift. At the end of the day, Tourism Ucluelet is here to help support the businesses that have opened and welcoming visitors to the area. It is our job to help support those businesses, but it's the approach in which we go about bringing people here is what is fundamentally changing. It's not just about heads and beds. It's about bringing the right consumer to the area that respects where it is that we live, because without where we live, people will not come here. And so we really have to change that narrative and have people understand that they're coming here and helping preserve where it is that we live as well. So it is because of these beautiful images that we have here, and those who live here, that create a thriving community that really support Ucluelet, as well as why people actually do enjoy coming here. They love the community feel of Ucluelet. It is very different to our neighbors in the north, and that really is it's a big defining factor for us. So we really take that into everything that we do, because we all live here too, and we want to preserve where it is that we live as well. And I'm pretty sure I've gone over like I usually do, so I apologize for that. But it's we can't do what we do without the board of directors that I have, and of course like the support that we have from the district staff and council as well. So I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Denise. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you very much for that presentation. That was great. Do you have any idea what the number is last year of tourists that came here? I know that's probably a hard piece of data to come up with, but do you have an estimate?
The number that we tend to use is one that Parks Canada tends to share with us, just because there's sensors all over the roads and they have this crazy algorithm. And it wasn't as high as 2019, but I would say it would have been close to 1 million visitors to the West Coast. So that's what they collect in the Long Beach unit. And so that's kind of going between both of them. In a crude metric, I would say that between the number of beds that we have here in Ucluelet and the number possibly in Tofino, you could be looking at an extra 10,000 people on a daily basis between the two communities, if not a little bit more. And that doesn't include for, like day visitors. And it stuns me that people drive up for the day from Victoria, but I guess they want to stand on Long Beach, so.
Great, thank you. Any other
problem.
questions?
I commend your investment in the West Coast Ambassador Program. Just some top-notch programming. Very encouraging to see.
Absolutely. No, just beside everything else, it is an excellent program, and it does definitely help our frontline staff. So, no, we're always happy to support with that for sure.
And the new map that is out at the Pacific Rim Visitor Center,
Yes.
it's actually orientated the right way, correct?
Yeah.
So that the territories are kind of shown in the right direction.
Yeah, we absolutely did that. So we did flip it. So when somebody's standing there and they're looking at the map, the ocean is actually in front of them, and each community is where it's intended to be instead of the reverse of it. So it was just for proper orientation that we set it up that way.
That was great. I was happy to see that. Yeah. And looking forward to the board meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, no, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Great. Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
I think we need a second for that, actually.
Motion the keys. Thanks, Joey.
Is there any unfinished business? Okay. We have 3 bylaw items today. The first bylaw item on the agenda is rezoning application 23-02, 1633 Holly Crescent. This report will be presented by the planning assistant, Monica Whitney Brown. After the planning assistant presents, the applicant will have an opportunity to address council. Ms. Whitney Brown, welcome.
I have to recuse myself.
Okay. Councillor Kennington is recusing himself.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor just noted, this application is for a rezoning at the property at 1633 Holly Crescent. And you can see it's shaded there in black on the map before you. Next slide, please. So the property currently has a duplex. You can see it in this image. The duplex itself was built in 1979. In 1999, bylaw number 800 was adopted by council, which included several blanket rezonings, including this property, which was rezoned to R1 single-family dwelling. Under this zoning, which is still in place to this day, duplexes are not a permitted use. But this one, of course, can continue as a lawfully non-conforming use under Section 528 of the Local Government Act. However, this status does limit what the property owner can do on their lot in order to maintain that use. Next slide, please. So under the R1 zone, B&B uses and secondary suites are permitted secondary uses for this property. However, the bylaw specifically does not allow these uses in conjunction with a duplex. So the applicant approached the district seeking to introduce these uses and determined that under their current zoning, they would actually have to renovate and remove the duplex use, which would displace, they have 2 long-term tenants using both halves of the duplex. So the applicant expressed that they would prefer to keep those residents and allow increased housing on their property. So they're seeking to rezone to R2, medium density residential, to allow that duplex use as a permitted use, and add a site-specific zoning to allow one secondary suite to be built in conjunction with each principal duplex use. So at maximum build out, the property could then have 4 dwelling units, 2 duplex units, 2 secondary suites. This proposed rezoning would increase the allowable floor area ratio, but the neighborhood context could certainly, I think, support the rezoning. It's a mixed residential street with other nearby R2 properties, as you can see on this zoning map right in front of you. So the red is the property in question here, and there's a few other R2 properties, including right across the street at sort of townhouse development there. So permitting up to 4 dwellings in this zoning on this particular lot would not be out of step, I don't think, with nearby properties and neighborhood characteristics. Next slide, please. It's also permitting secondary suites in a duplex use is also in line with changes to the BC Building Code, which occurred over the last few years and now allow secondary suites to be built in a variety of housing types, including duplexes and row housing, as you can see in that graphic. So that the second one in the green kind of is what this would look like. So as just a final note, the applicant had originally intended to develop a B&B use on their property, and they've clarified their intent and are now actually seeking a rezoning to build long-term housing instead. However, they would like to seek a temporary use permit to allow them to operate a short-term rental in one of the secondary suites to help recoup some of the costs of that renovation. So a temporary use permit would be for a 3-year period, and as council has previously discussed, temporary use permits can be a really effective way to manage tourist commercial accommodations in residential zones. They're subject to public comment and additional council scrutiny and don't alter the underlying zoning. So if council chooses to give first and second reading to this proposed rezoning, bylaw staff will give notice and bring that temporary use permit back at the public hearing at the same meeting as the public hearing for this rezoning. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have at this point, and also the applicant is here as well and should, of course, be given a chance to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney Brown. Any questions from council at this moment? I did note that the potential for this rezoning would permit up to 4 dwelling units, whereas it could be as many as 6 with the current zoning. Is that correct?
So under the current zoning, the R1 zoning, they could have 3 bed and breakfast units, the single family dwelling, a secondary suite, and an accessory dwelling unit. Usually the limiting factor is parking, but they have quite a bit of parking. So that would be maximum build out of an R1 property. R2 properties, this particular one would just be zoned for a duplex with the secondary suite. So maximum build out would be the 4 units.
Great, thank you. Would the applicant like to speak? And just your name and address, please.
Veda Siga. I live at Millstream. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address this proposal that we have. I'd like to just ask if there are any other questions about what we're planning. Initially I bought this back in it would have been the 80s, using my retirement money with a view to having sustainable housing in my old age. So that's where I'm going with this. Are there any concerns or questions?
Any questions from council? No, I don't think we have any.
Thank you so much for your consideration, and I'd like to thank Monica so much for helping sort out the mind-boggling governance. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a really great report. Thank you for your report. And this blanket zoning that happened in '99 it has created a lot of issues, and we have another issue because of it coming up later in the agenda with the Neptune plant. Mr. Lawrence and I were talking about it this morning and wondering why the council of the day did that blanket rezoning, and we came up with a couple of ideas that may be related to the OCP, perhaps. I don't know if Mr. Gregg would like to say anything about that.
Good afternoon. Thank you, through the mayor. I don't have a crystal ball on what was in everyone's mind at the time. Yes, there's a bit of a theme on some of the items on your agenda today, where there's a bit of housekeeping and adaptation to some zoning changes that happened in the past. I think at the time it was my read of the OCP at the time, and sort of just reading some intent maybe into it, and maybe that's not fair to do, but it seemed like the zoning was being sort of optimistically put in place at a time when the community was looking at a transition from a small town that had been more resource-based to, maybe some other interest in development and tourism is coming our way, and we'll put the zoning in place and encourage that. And maybe not enough thought was given to the impact on existing uses, or allowing or expecting that individual property owners or business owners would be carrying on. And I think that the update to the OCP, I'm getting ahead of myself into one of our other reports and applications here, but I think the recently adopted OCP gives, I think, a longer range view and looks at more diversity within the community and values what the community has in both tourism and other diverse uses, including fishing, forestry, and the community that's here. And so yes, there's a bit of a theme of, we have an old bylaw or a series of bylaws and zoning changes made in 1999. Some of them are still with us, and really we're just trying to adapt and allow people to move forward, with their properties today.
Thank you for that. Mr. Larson, would you like to come and give us an overview? No, please at the microphone, because we're streaming on YouTube. Thank you. Normally I wouldn't allow this, but I know Mr. Larson has a wealth of information on this topic.
I thought maybe it was time to
Just your name
tell you
and
what
address.
happened.
Just your name and address first, please.
My name is Eric Larson. I live at 332 Marine Drive and operate a business at 1351 Eva Road. So in 1999, I was the council representative at the official community plan that day. And the planner of the day was very enthusiastic, had advertised, got about 50 people to come to the UAC hall. He had laid out the UAC hall in maps. All the tables were covered in maps. He encouraged the assembled to draw circles around neighborhoods on the maps. So enthusiastic citizens drew circles around neighborhoods, and one of them was Eva Road, which I'm going to address a little later. And then he had pads with red dots, little stickers like the size of a dime with various colors on them. And each color represented a specific zone. And he encouraged you to come around and put your particular sticker on the circled area to see what you preferred to have the zoning be in those areas. And so these people, with their little pads and their little stickers, went around, stuck stickers on these circled areas. And I stood there and watched it and said to myself, go ahead and put your stickers wherever you want, but you're not going to change my zoning. And so, which turned out to be not correct, as Mr. Craig said. But at any rate, so a whole bunch of stuff happened after that, and I'm not exactly sure what took place. As I understood it at the time, zoning could not change because people were putting stickers on maps. But as I learned later on, you got to keep in mind I was also sitting on council. And something happened that I just wasn't even aware of. And that's something for council members to consider, that you need to pay attention to everything, because things can happen that you don't know about. But at any rate, as a result, later I found that the zoning had changed, and it applies to the one you just had also. The ones that concern me are 12 and 1300 blocks of Eva Road. But that's a short of how this happened, and it makes no sense, and it's creating all kinds of trouble for the last, almost 25 years now. So I'll come back when I'm ready to talk about the next subject.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. I knew you could shed some light on it. And I remember when this blanket rezoning happened, and it was sort of in conjunction with that OCP reworking. So somewhere, somehow, something went awry. So pay attention. I see that there is a staff recommendation, and the motions should be moved separately.
And voted on separately. Sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
stated separately.
I can take the first one.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great idea, and I think it's in line with BC Housing. So, adding that density, I think that fits in perfectly with the town, and it's a good idea. So I move that council give first and second reading to the District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1328, 2023.
I will second that.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I would also move that council refer District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1328, 2023 to a public hearing.
I'll second.
Nope.
Oh, we have a tie.
I'll second.
Councillor Mashty, any further discussion?
I just super briefly jump in to say that I personally have been an opponent of short-term rentals, but I think it's all a question of context, and within the context presented, I think this is how we can see them as a valuable tool to achieve the goals of our community, and so this is an exception to the rule that I think should set a good example for other folks that would see short-term rentals as a means to an end, and that end being the strength and the integrity of the community and the people who live here. So I think this is something I'm happy to support myself.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Thank you. Thank you. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. Just saying. Our second bylaw item is 7.2, 5-year financial plan and tax rates bylaws. This report will be presented by our Chief Financial Officer, Donna Monteith. Welcome.
Thank you, through the mayor. So this report covers actually both bylaws, our financial plan bylaw and our tax rates bylaw. And it's essentially the legal math of everything that we've done since December of 2022. So the first bylaw is the 5-year financial plan. We always have to adopt that one first, because without a financial plan, you can't have a tax rate. And the financial plan has to have basic objectives and policies that are required under the community charter. So on page 39, Schedule A, we presented our financial plan total of $19,880,502 for 2023. That number corresponds with our slideshow at the special council meeting on April 13th. And we spoke about revenues throughout the process. A lot of talk about alternative revenue sources and what kinds of things can we do and continue to do to try and mitigate our property taxes. And then on the next page, we show actually how our revenues are distributed throughout the different categories. So our taxes make up 21% of our budget, which isn't actually that bad when you start to compare them to other towns and municipalities. And then the rest of the objectives within the bylaw are fairly straightforward. They're very common. They're very generic. However, through the process next year with your new CFO, you might want to make some changes during the budget process. That's a good time to start talking about what kinds of other objectives, if any, that you might want to have. We do have, of course, 2 permissive tax exemptions, and in 2022 they totaled over $61,000 in exemptions for societies within the district. And then on page 42 of the same bylaw is where the hours and hours of work magically appear on one page. And of course, it's for the 5 years coming up, 23 to 27, but you adopt a financial plan every single year. So you'll be revising 2024 forward in the next budget cycle. So that's the financial plan bylaw. And then the tax rates bylaw is, simply put, it's the mill rate. So when I know how much money we need to pull in general municipal taxes, so just the taxes that we keep, plug it into the spreadsheet and it spreads it out and it spits out the mill rate at me. So that's that chart that you see on page 45. So you've got your general municipal mill rates by class, as defined by BC Assessment. And then we also are able to put in the rates for the Regional District Hospital and the ACRD, as well as the Vancouver Island Library. We don't put in the others because we don't know what those rates are from the province or any of the other sources yet. They usually adopt those in May. And then we just apply those rates when we do our tax notices for the year, and they'll total just over $4 million. That's pretty general report, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions from council? Councillor Anderson?
I already asked you this before, but so just for other folks, when we're trying to calculate what the total mill rate is and those other multipliers that come out in like the 1st of May, maybe, is that right? Can you track those down on one website? So it would be police, schools, right? Is there a way to get those other multipliers on? Is it just one website, or do you got to kind of chase those down?
We thank you. So we put our tax rate on our website, of course, and then we can put the links to the others in there. So when the province comes out with their mill rates and MFA and BC assessments, we can put it on the finance page. I believe it is already, but I don't want to speak out of turn. So if it's not, we'll put those in there. They'll still have to click on every individual link to find the mill rates. And then we also send the report to the Victoria Real Estate Board as well. So the realtors are able to grab those mill rates to let people know what their taxes would be coming up as well. Like, it's all public information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions from council? I had one on under revenue, federal/provincial in place of taxes for $50,000. Looking on page 40, third line down.
Yeah, that's called properties in lieu of taxes. So we don't. It's crown property that we can't charge municipal tax on. So what the federal government does is reimburse us for those properties at our mill rate. So it comes out to approximately $50,000.
And I see you've put that in over the next 5 years. It's exactly the same amount.
Yeah, it's an estimate.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Perfect. Any other questions for Ms. Monteith? There are 2 recommendations, and they should be moved separately. Would council like to make a motion?
I'll move that council give first, second, and third read to District of Ucluelet 2023 to 2027 financial plan bylaw number 1329, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Mafti. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries.
I'll also move that council give first, second, and third read to District of Ucluelet annual tax rates bylaw number 1330, 2023.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Thank you, Ms. Monteith. Our last bylaw item is 7.3, addition of daycare center use to the CS2 zone and a cleanup of section something else. 403? 403. Thank you. Mr. Gregg.
There we are. Thank you, through the mayor. Next slide, please. This is zoning bylaw housekeeping round 2 for this council agenda. This is what we would typically refer to as a housekeeping amendment, where there's a couple of items. And so in a very brief nutshell, bylaw number 1328 would do 2 things. One, and council will could be forgiven for thinking, didn't we already deal with this with the prohibition of having a secondary suite in the same single-family house that operates a B&B? And yes, there was an amendment last year which would have removed that prohibition, and it did it in one place, but hiding in section 403.2 subsection 2 was another prohibition. There's duplication within the zoning bylaw, and we came across it. And so this amendment would simply remove that prohibition to be consistent with the other changes that have already been made. And then the second would be extending daycare center use as a permitted use in the CS2 service commercial zone, where it is not currently a permitted use. Could I have the next slide, please? The daycare center is a use in the CS1 which is the sort of the village green commercial zone, which is the slightly darker red, but the CS2 zone is the sort of bright orangey red that extends all along Peninsula Road. Essentially, we do have an application for a property that is seeking to allow a daycare within a mixed-use building, and rather than forcing them to go through a rezoning, staff consider that there is no downside to, given the need for daycare within commercial and mixed-use buildings. They would still need development permits. This was simply seen as a simple suggested expansion of allowing daycare uses in multiple locations, with the hope that if property or business owners come forward and want to extend that use, well, then that's one less hurdle. With that, I would just see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Any questions from council?
Apparently, I need to recuse myself on this one as well.
Oh, okay. Councillor Kennington is recusing himself. Councillor Hoare?
Just want to clarify something, Mr. Gregg. Your slide references, and you said bylaw 1328, but our package says 1326. I wouldn't want to pass the wrong bylaw.
It is bylaw number 1326. That slide listing them was an error. Sorry.
All good. Just making sure.
The bylaw, the draft bylaw, is on page 51 of the agenda, and it is bylaw number 1326.
Thank you for clarifying that. These are both housekeeping items, really. So I don't think there's too much to discuss here. Nope. Okay. Okay, Councillor Hoare.
I will move that council give first and second reading to District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1326/2023 and direct staff to give notice for a public hearing.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. We can get Councillor Kennington back in. We have 3 report items this evening. The first report item is Finance Officer appointment. Our Chief Administrative Officer will be presenting this report. Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I'm on the wrong one. So this is with respect to the appointment of myself as the Chief Financial Officer. As Council may be aware, but the public may not be, Donna Monteith, our current Director of Finance, is leaving us for another opportunity. She's been with us for 4.5 years, done an outstanding job, and we're going to miss her. But with her moving on to a new opportunity as of May 5th, we need to appoint the officer's position to allow for us to carry on and meet the requirements under the community charter. We are noting that that we're going to be rescinding Ms. Monteith's appointment as the Director of Finance, and then placing myself as the Director of Finance, and also rescinding her signatory rights, so she can't sign off on anything after she departs on May 5th. We did note that within the third resolution that we're presenting to Council, that Council appoint Dwayne Lawrence as the District of Ucluelet Finance Officer and tax collector. It needs to be added into that. So we need somebody to collect the taxes as well as be the Director of Finance, or sorry, the Chief Financial Officer. So we'd request that Council just add that into the motion. Mr. Rottenberg has a motion drafted for us as the correction. If Council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from Council? Pretty straightforward, I think. And these can be all moved together, I believe. Mr. Rottenberg, yes.
Actually, I think in this case,
separate.
It would be very convenient if they're separate. That way, in case we have to submit any one of these resolutions to a tax authority, it's easier and cleaner for us.
Okay, so we will move them separately then.
Yes, that's my recommendation.
Looking for a mover.
I've got it. I'm very sad to do it. I will move that Council rescind the appointment of Donna Monteith as the District of Ucluelet Finance Officer and Collector of Taxes effective May 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
I will move that Council rescind Donna Monteith's appointment as a District of Ucluelet Authorized Signatory effective May 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that carries.
And I will move that Council appoint Dwayne Lawrence as the District of Ucluelet Finance Officer and Collector of Taxes effective May 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
I'll second that.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Thank you. The next report item is 8.2, Temporary Use Permit 23-04, 250 Main Street. This report will be presented by the Planning Assistant, Monica Whitney Brown. After the Planning Assistant speaks, the applicant will have an opportunity to address Council. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council. This application, as mentioned, is for a temporary use permit at the property at 250 Main Street, which is also known as the Ucluelet Lodge building. And you can see its location shaded there in the map. Next slide, please. So the applicant is seeking a temporary use permit to allow a cannabis sales use in a commercial unit in the Helen Road facing side of the Ucluelet Lodge building. You can see a map of the location on screen. There, sort of in the red box, would be where the unit would be. And this top would allow the operation of a licensed non-medical cannabis retail store for a period of 3 years. Next slide, please. So just for a brief background, when the federal government legalized recreational cannabis use in 2018, municipalities were sort of tasked with updating their zoning bylaws to manage the use. And the Ucluelet zoning bylaw was amended to provide a definition of cannabis sales, which you can see there on the screen in front of you. And section 303.36 of that same bylaw prohibits cannabis sales anywhere in the district unless authorized. So what this means is that any potential applicants have to seek a rezoning or a temporary use permit to allow the use. As part of this bylaw update, at the time, Council in 2018 adopted a motion on policies to consider in determining the merits of a cannabis sales use, specifically a rezoning, for applications and for applicants to note going forward. At that time, there were 3 rezoning applications received in 2019, and based on community feedback and discussion at that time, Council ultimately did not move forward on adopting any of those uses. So this application, if successful, would represent the first of this type of use in Ucluelet. Next slide, please. So the applicant is an experienced cannabis retailer with an active license in Port Alberni, which has been in operation for about 3 years, I think. And they have provided further details of the training and education their staff and sales team undergo in their application letter, which is in the agenda before council. The applicant also, it should be noted, is proposing some modest landscape and streetscape improvements adjacent to the rear loading and sort of parking area of this property, the lodge property. You can see the mock-up in front of you of sort of how this commercial unit would look. And also just note that the applicant's decision to apply for a temporary use permit rather than a rezoning might be preferable to council. It gives council a chance to set conditions, seek public input, and provide almost a sort of a trial 3-year period for this use without permanently allowing it in the zoning at this stage. So since the community discussion, which occurred in 2018 and 2019, the landscape of cannabis sales throughout BC and Canada has changed somewhat. These retail uses are now fairly common throughout many downtown locations, including in Tofino and Port Alberni. And the factors and considerations which were top of mind for municipalities at the time of legalization may have changed and evolved as the use has become more commonplace within the retail fabric of a lot of communities. So staff did sort of deem it appropriate at this time to bring this proposal to council prior to giving notice for the temporary use permit, in order for council to bring any additional or alternative considerations to this discussion that they may wish and provide some direction to staff. And based on council feedback at this time, if council wishes it, staff will draft a temporary use permit and give notice so the community can participate in that discussion at a future date. So this time, as always, happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions and should be given the chance to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney Brown. Any questions for Ms. Whitney Brown at this point? No? Okay. Would the applicant like to speak? Oh, right. Just before you speak, we're just going to take a 2-minute recess. Could I have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
All in favor? That carries. Sorry, we just need 2 minutes.
That's okay.
I just have to. My kids are in the art club, and I just have to go take them out.
It's all about the kids tonight.
It is all
Mr. Hanson, just your name and address, please.
There we go. Andrew Hanson, 2216 Lake Placid. I'm the applicant for the tub at 250 Main Street. I won't go into detail because the planning department has done hours of work, and thank you guys for all the stuff you've done on it now and back in 2019. The reason why we asked for a temporary use permit is because we thought it would be easier work for the planning department and an easier decision for the council to have an opportunity to see how this fits within the community and see if everybody's prepared for it and what we can do as a company and what we do right now as a company to sell cannabis and liquor. I would like to be here if anybody has any questions or anything like that. Again, there's all the information has already been provided, so I don't want to take up too much time.
Any questions for Mr. Hanson? We have a quiet group this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a good opportunity for a trial period. A temporary use permit is 3 years, and that gives us a chance to see if it's working or if it's not working. If there's no other questions from council, there is a recommendation.
I've got one quick question. And
Council.
I'm not sure whether it's to Mr. Gregg or Mr. Hanson. It says in your letter, Andrew, I believe that the tub is for Unit 6, but the actual motion that we were given was just generically for 250 Main Street, and I just don't know if it needs to be specific for a unit or if it's a general. You see, it's probably a question for the planning department. But I thought it was important, if it needed to be specific, that we get it right when.
Mr. Gregg?
Anyone in that block can sell cannabis.
Well, right?
Go get a haircut.
It could matter, right?
Through the mayor, there's probably a blanket zone we could put in place there.
Do you have your stickers there?
It's clear from the plans that are in the agenda and that were on the screen, the location that's being proposed, and as part of this, yes, we can define that. Those plans would be attached to the permit. That drafting up the permit would be our next step, and that we'll define it clearly, so that is also clear for when it goes forward for public input as well. We'd have to give notice of that, and so we'd make sure that we're specific to the location on the site, not just the site, so that people see clearly what is being proposed.
I just wanted to make sure that it didn't have to be specific at this point. In case it did. Did that make sense? I think I just double negative myself. It's been a long day.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Councillor Anderson?
I had a question about looking at the Appendix B that was sent along. Was there a motion in 2018? Was the second recommendation on that page, the B appendix, about the distance? I guess it would be to a playground. There's an intention for a playground, isn't there, in Village Green that would be within 300 meters of that?
Through the mayor, yes. So that in 2018, at the time, if I recall, when the province was about to make it legal to consume and to have retail sales of cannabis, council at the time we did some zoning amendments to define, so that essentially have the bylaw control over where the location would be, and council passed a motion sort of indicating there was a lineups forming of applicants who were interested and were going to be potentially applying to the province for licensing. And so council had indicated, here's some criteria that you might want to consider, and one of them was distance from parks, playgrounds, public gathering spaces. That was a consideration at the time. So the location that's being proposed, yes, it's within 300 meters of the playground in Village Green. It's 95 or 100 meters, I think, distance if you were walking from one to the other. It's not within line of sight. And the other consideration, I think we looked at, like the for comparison, the government liquor store is about 65 meters away from the playground. Also, essentially same building, other side of the building, not visible, not line of sight, but also it's within that core of the village green as well.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, Mr. Gregg. So we do have a recommendation. Would someone like to move it? Councillor Mafty?
I'll move that council direct staff to give notice for public input and draft temporary use permit 23-04 to allow cannabis sales use at 250 Main Street for a period of 3 years.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Hoare. Any further discussion? It will be interesting to see what the public has to say, since it was 2019 the last time that we had applications before us.
I'm kind of curious to see what they say about a temporary, like the sort of trial.
The trial period, yeah.
But the only way you get it into the public is to put it out there.
Behave yourself, yeah.
And
The only concern with the temporary use permit is no matter what happens at the end of the day, good luck taking it away. So once you peel that off, there's no going back. Like, we can call it a temporary use permit, but just careful what you wish for is my feelings on this. That's all I have to say.
I think there is a way to revoke a temporary use permit after it expires. Mr. Gregg, that's correct.
Through the mayor, it is a temporary use permit that revoking it, that step is often for non-compliance with conditions of the permit or something like that. But once it expires, an applicant would have to, if they wanted to renew it, they'd have to apply to renew that permit, and that's a future decision of council. They don't automatically extend.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question while you're up there through the mayor? At that point, 3 years have elapsed. It's up for review. Is it a start from scratch public consultation for a whole new process, or like is the process to renew or to extend or to formalize starting from zero with a public consultation?
So the temporary use permit does have a requirement for notification, so that the public has a chance to comment, and we do that with renewals as well. So I think the applicant has indicated that this is a way of sort of testing this, and presumably if it is going well, they'd be applying to not renew it, but perhaps to make it a permanent allowance there. But time would tell. But if they wish to just simply renew the temporary use permit, then that would be the application. We'd have to give notice again and go through this again. And so the temporary use permit is. They can be long-term with renewals and issuing new permits. And as I have explained to council, I'm aware of one campground that I'm familiar with that I think it's been operating for about 35 years under temporary use permits. Every 2 or 3 years they're renewing and updating, and it's really in that case checking in to make sure they're still meeting their conditions, and that community just keeps renewing it. So, but that doesn't say they have to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other further discussion?
And if I'm not mistaken, this isn't. We're not really voting on issuing the temporary use permit. We're just giving notice for public input and for staff to draft it. Right.
That's correct.
My understanding. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to confirm that.
All right. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. The final report item is temporary use permit 1341 Eber Road, Neptune Ice. This report will be presented by the Director of Community Planning, Mr. Gregg. After Mr. Gregg presents, a representative from Neptune Ice will have an opportunity to address council. Welcome back.
Thank you. And so through the mayor, this temporary use permit, there's two sides to this, as you've already heard. There's sort of the small piece specific to this application for a temporary use permit, and then there's a larger piece around why do they need a temporary use permit for a small addition to their existing business. Next slide, please. So the small piece is small. The immediate piece is Neptune Ice, which is a the applicants are here. They'll describe their operation. They have a letter. They described it in detail. It's an ice plant and fish offloading facility that's at 1341 Eber Road. It's been there for decades, and they wish to add a 30 by 30 building in the little red square area to allow them to have a DFO, CFIA licensed food or fish processing and sales locations, so that they could do some direct sales to the community, either individuals, locals, tourists, selling seafood directly off the dock, or sort of small wholesale to local restaurants and perhaps even our grocery store. So that really the local food is the intent. And the reason the temporary use permit would be necessary is that they are zoned R1 single family residential currently as a result of that 1999 blanket rezoning, as are in the picture here. So the upland areas highlighted or surrounded with a green polygon. Their water lease with the wharf and ice facilities are in the dashed blue line. Immediately to the north is Eric Larson Diesel. A couple doors down, as you can see, another ice plant. That's Yuki Ice. Those are all single-family residential zoned properties. Their water areas are zoned for marine conservation, which allows for recreational uses in marine conservation, not the marine industrial areas. These three are I think a illustration of what happened with that blanket rezoning. Our OCP, which was adopted in 2022, recognized this. So the long-range land use plan, could you advance the slide, please? Shows, here it is, there's a light gray area that is industrial. So it shows the long-range land use that is adopted in the OCP bylaw now shows that these marine industrial businesses are expected to continue, that they could remain as marine industry and are not intended in the long range to be forced out or change. And there's policy in the OCP suggesting that we update the zoning to match that. And we've begun that process. As we got into it, we'd hoped to just bring forward a zoning amendment to clean it up. It's a little messier than I'd hoped, and so we need a little more time to do get the zoning right to clean this up for these properties, and also to be in touch with the different property owners. We've heard from the Farringtons, the owners of Neptune Ice, and Mr. Larson that they're keen to see this happen. But we haven't had a chance to be in touch with all of them. But some of them, like Ucluelet Harbor Seafoods, they're not zoned single-family residential. They're zoned basically for village green commercial. So retail and T-shirt shops would be allowed, but having a fish processing plant isn't. So there's a bit of work to do here. So the reason we have a temporary use permit here is essentially a quick workaround to enable Neptune Ice to obtain a building permit to put a 30 by 30 fish sales building on their property, which otherwise is, it's lawfully non-conforming, so they can't expand that use. So this gives them, basically removes the hurdle so they can get a building permit and carry on, while meanwhile we work on updating our marine industrial zoning. The applicants are here, and but first I'll see if there's any questions from council.
Any questions for Mr. Gregg? Councillor Mafty?
Yeah, through the mayor, this is just a quick question, and I just want to clarify for my own sake. This is not just a step that would be required for the construction of whatever building or shop or whatever, but presumably also this would have to come into place before the applicants could apply for a license to sell that product or anything else. So this is like they can't pursue those two things separately.
Exactly. When we are issuing, or we have an application for a building permit, and one of the things is a zoning check. Does it comply with our bylaws? If no, we don't give a building permit. That's the way the bylaws work. Similar with a business license. So there's this hurdle there so that lawfully non-conforming use, yes, they can continue on because they were established decades ago and on they go, but it does really limit what they can do. They can't expand what they've been doing. And so really recognizing, as I said earlier, I think it was a bit optimistic around some potential changes where they put this blanket zoning in, or it was just really, in some ways, I think it may have been more short-sighted of seeing that really, if you look at the properties, even just on Eber Road, there's millions of dollars of capital sunk into these businesses, into the marine industry that's been part of the community for 50 plus years. It's not going to just pick up and move. It's not like, oh, well, a little bit of, single family residential will displace that and they'll, move all of that somewhere else in town. That just doesn't fit. And I think we have a better and different appreciation in town for the value of the marine industry. And I think COVID showed that at one point when many businesses were shut down and tourist businesses were shut down, but people were going to the ice plants because it was essential work. This is food security. You can't eat tourism, but seafood is an important part of our diets. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I know one of the first questions my guests ask is, where can I go buy some fresh seafood? Yeah, that's right next door almost. That's great. The applicants are here. I don't know if anyone needs to hear from the applicants or if it's... Mr. Gregg said it all. Is anyone keen to ask a question of the applicants? Nope. Okay, I think this is a no-brainer. There is a staff recommendation.
I am really happy to move this one because this is part of that strategic plan where we were diversifying things, and so being able to diversify an already existing marine industry for locally based seafood, and I know some of the fishers that are really excited about this going forward too. So more power to you guys. I will move that council directs staff to give notice of its intent to consider issuance of a temporary use permit 23-08 to allow fish processing and sales in a proposed new 84-meter squared building on the Neptune Ice Wharf at 1341 Eber Road for a period of 3 years, while a broader update to the marine industrial zones in Ucluelet proceeds.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion?
I would just chime in to echo Jen's comments. I think this is exactly what I'm excited to see in Ucluelet, and I know that there are examples elsewhere. And whenever I'm in Victoria, I go to Finest at Sea, and there are a few places that have proven this model. And I think it's a win-win because it adds something for you, it adds something for the community, and I think it's something that's really satisfying for visitors to our community as well. Like it's a win-win-win all around, and I wish you guys all of the good luck and success to make it happen. Oh yeah. Well, on the wall they've got pictures of some of the boats, and I'm like, I've seen that boat in Yuki all the time. So yeah.
Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Well done. Excellent. And you don't have to stay if you don't want to. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we have two correspondence items. The first one is regarding the boardwalk adjacent to Strata Plan VIS 4943, 1971 Harbor Drive in Ucluelet. Just wondering if staff has any update on the progress of this of the boardwalks. Mr. Lawrence?
Getting eyes from Miss Fortune that she could probably provide an update. She's been working on this file.
That makes sense since it's in the harbor. Welcome, Ms. Fortune.
Oh, I was the shortest one in this group. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Yes, through the Mayor, this project is something that we have booked out for the 23 to 2025. It is we're now funded through RMI on this project, and so we are working with a marine biologist who's helping us work through the process. I'd be more than happy to send off a letter to Ardent Properties and just explain to them where we're at. It's going to be a process, and this year is permit and planning, and it will take a while, but we've got funding behind the project, so that certainly goes a long way to help it move forward.
Excellent. So you don't really know what the timeline is. It's just a long one.
Correct. I can break it down a little more. So 2023, this year we're hoping for permanent planning for the full project, because now we've brought both the boardwalk and gazebo area as well as along the causeway there, and then we're looking further beyond that for the entire project. But we do want to properly plan through, and there are some permitting issues along that line. But doing them together reduces our time. Otherwise, we're looking at a 6-year project as opposed to a 2 to 3 year project.
Any questions for Ms. Fortune?
Do you need a resolution to send maybe a little update letter to Ardent, or no? Okay, just making sure.
Great. Thanks for that update.
Thank you.
The second correspondence item is from Peter Timmermans regarding parking on Cedar Street. And he's bringing attention to the fact that there is a lot that's for sale on Cedar Street. Is it street or road? Cedar Street. And also the fact that there should be better signage for our Cedar Road parking lot. Is there some funds set aside for some signage, Mr. Lawrence, for the Cedar Hub?
We have been discussing over the last 12 months about increasing the signage with the Peninsula Road development as well as just the Village Green. So we'll be looking at that to more clearly define what our plans are for parking right now. About a year and a half ago, forgive me, I don't remember the dates, we were talking about encouraging RV parking along Cedar Road rather than in the small parking lot that's currently designated for RV parking, because it can only fit about 4 or 6 RVs in there, and it's really a difficult area to park an RV in. So we're thinking about focusing on street parking for RVs, and then repurposing that RV parking lot as just regular parking for vehicles. So you could fit a lot more cars in there, and then just designate areas along Cedar to RV parking. So we do have a little bit of sign up there now, but we can definitely add a little bit more.
Great, thank you.
I got another question regarding this. Have we thought about no RV parking perhaps along Peninsula Road, or on Main Street in front of the bank, or anything like that?
It has been discussed at the staff level. Nothing has come before council for specific direction at this point in time.
Do you need any guidance from us to bring forward a report of some sort?
If it's a desire of council to add this on to have staff bring something back, we can definitely do that. I don't need a resolution for it unless council wants to provide one. That would be fine too. So either or.
I think signage is definitely needed for that parking area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, several parking areas actually, but
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just leave it in your capable hands then.
Okay, we'll bring up a report forward for council's consideration then.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just have one quick question. I'm new to this. Has council in the past bought land for purposes such as this?
that?
Yes, I believe they have. So Cedar Hub parking lot, I think, was purchased actually for the development of a parking lot.
Initially, we were thinking a parkade, but parkades are really expensive, so it became a parking lot. But yes, that was in during my first term.
And follow-up question, I don't know if can be answered here. Does anyone know how much this lot is listed for right now?
I am unaware of what the retail price for it is. I do believe, and I can confirm with Ms. Monteith, I don't believe we have much funding in our land reserve that would allow us to do that. So if that was something that council would like us to pursue, it should be considered in the greater scheme of future land use needs and prioritizing on it. We wouldn't want to use any available funds from our land reserve specifically to a parking lot without giving due consideration to our future land needs and making sure we're buying the right piece of land with the limited funds that we have. But I am uncertain about how large or small that account is. I suspect that it's not significant.
It would make sense to look at purchasing land at some point for future affordable housing projects, because land is what's really going up, because it is in short supply, and once we're built out here on the peninsula, we're done and we're not going to have anything. So, as far as buying land for a parking lot, it may seem like a waste of money, but if long term we're thinking that we can pull the parking and do affordable housing at a time when land has tripled in value and it no longer makes sense with current land values. But today maybe land is cheap compared to what it will be in 10 years, and we're going to keep on having those housing pressures. So we should maybe consider land purchases when they make sense and if we can afford it.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we'll move on to council committee reports. Councillor Anderson.
All right. That's a very good point. A couple of things that we went to. Well, I won't hog the floor for the AVICC, but that was a great conference to go to. It was eye-opening. There was definitely different than the LGLA in the fact that we were doing the motions from the floor. That's the first time I've seen that before. So that was like really being in the rodeo. That was pretty wild. Things were getting changed, points of order and things like that. So that was neat to see. And then there was a couple of really good talks that went on there. One of them was the attainable housing one, and we learned a little bit about some of the new stuff with BC Housing and the CMHC moving forward. And other than that, I went to a meeting that was a mix of the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network and Coastal Family Resource Coalition. So Faye Mizar and Marcy DeWitt teamed up, and that was over at the gym at Itatsu. And so that was pretty interesting. So there's a lot of talk about what's going on with youth initiatives and health. There's a whole bunch of different people there from different networks, a lot of folks from Nanaimo, Alberni. And then after that, they did a harm reduction kind of seminar where they brought naloxone and things like that and talked about just sort of the state where things are right now and talked about transportation and things like that. But yeah, it was great to be there, meet everybody in person. That's it for me.
Any questions for Councillor Anderson? Thank you. Councillor Hoare.
Really enjoyed the AVICC. You guys went to attainable housing. I figured two of you that was enough. I went to one on food resiliency, which was quite interesting, and I feel like the temporary use permit for Neptune Ice sort of is a step in that direction, but there were some really interesting bits in the Cowichan Valley about where they're doing land matching, people who want to farm with people who have land, and it was just quite fascinating. I always like a quote, so one of my favorite sessions was the reconciliation session, and John Jack's quote that when we're working with our neighbors, that we need to be going more than half the way, more than half the time. So just always taking that extra step. And the other little piece, just because I'm a big fan of laughter and happiness, is Thompson Highway, who was our keynote speaker at it, said to live with laughter. So I will do the best I can. Come laugh with me at the co-op any day. Yeah, those are my takeaways.
And any other meetings?
No. No, sorry. Shouldn't
Okay.
be quite so surprised.
Any questions for Councillor Hoare? Okay, Councillor Kennington.
Yeah, of course, AVICC, the Affordable Attainable Housing Forum was really interesting, and it kind of lit a fire under everybody there with the Housing Accelerator Fund, which has a very short deadline to come up with 5 strategic plans to get funding from the government. It's part of a $4 billion injection from the federal government. There was a lot of confusion around it, but at the end of the day, I think all they're looking for is a strategy to move forward with creating housing supply. And I think, we've been talking about that in our strategic planning, and I think we're well set up. And I'm thinking that we're going to see a report about this soon. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And if we can, potentially, if it's okay with everybody else, move this from the later to the now pile in the now, next, later. I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and it meshes with everything we've been talking about. So that was the most exciting thing for me, other than John Jack's inspirational speech, which almost brought me to tears at points. He's an amazing speaker, and he had a lot to say, and it was eye-opening for a lot of people in the room. So really enjoyed it, other than the neck pain.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Kennington? I attended that Affordable Attainable workshop as well, and there was a lot of confusion in the room. Just the way it was being described, that you didn't have to apply for a specific project, and that got everybody really confused. And so it's just like, just apply for the money. Just apply for the money. And so I think we're going to have something along those lines coming forward, because it is a tight turnaround on that one. Where am I? Councillor Mafty.
Whoa. I was, why is that so loud? I was sorry to not join you guys in Nanaimo. I did attend a community nonprofit info session hosted by the Ucluelet Aquarium last week. It was really nice, very mellow event, and just I myself, being in this space, often forget just how many community organizations we have and how active they are, and how much is accomplished. And it was really eye-opening, and I'd say about half the crowd was locals and people who are already familiar and, kind of preaching to the choir. But there were a bunch of tourists. It was a rainy day. Folks walked in. They had a great time. And there were people that were like, wait, what? Like, all of this is happening here? And it's like, yeah. It was it was really nice to see. And I'll just conclude, not with a report, but a shameless plug for another great community event, the Shorebird Soiree, this Thursday in Tofino at Hotel Z. I know it's a trek up the road, but it's a great event hosted by the Raincoast Education Society. I declare a conflict of interest here, but there's no conflict with oysters and music and food and drink, and it's a great event. So if you're looking for something to do on Thursday, come on up. Hotel Z's hosting, and it's gonna be lots of fun, and there'll be a little bit of education and a lot of entertainment, and hopefully it'll be one more social event. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Great. Any questions for Councillor Mafty?
Can you just turn up, or do you need tickets in advance to that?
Yeah, okay, technically you're supposed to register online, but I think most people have decided that they're not going to do that. So if you want to be, if you want to be like good, register online. Just go to raincoasteducation.org. You can register. We are fully prepared to have people come in at the door as well. And I on a totally different note, I perhaps this was mentioned at the last meeting, but our trip to Makoa really blew my mind. I was just flabbergasted at how much is going on out there. I assume that someone summarized it at the meeting I was absent, but that's stuck with me. I was just like, wow, impressive.
That was a great tour and really informative and yeah, just awesome to be invited to that. Okay, so on to my meetings. April 13th, we had our special budget meeting, of course. AVICC was the 13th through the 16th in Nanaimo. One of the highlights for me was actually the Friday morning tour, the community amenity tour. They took us to 5 places: the 5 Acre Farm, the Harewood Centennial Park, to Tuxtwan Affordable Housing Project, the Nanaimo Stadium District, which in itself is absolutely amazing, and the Steve Smith Bike Park, which shows what a BMX park really should look like. Not looking in any particular direction. It was a really good tour. The tour guide's name was Richard. I didn't catch his last name, but he's in charge of Parks and Recreation, I guess, for Nanaimo. And he was a great tour guide. And it was a full bus, so a lot of us, Jennifer was with me as well. It was a full bus load, so really enjoyed that. On the 18th, staff and I met with the Lot 16 people just to talk a little bit about their project that they have going on over there across the street. The 19th, the ACRD put on a social procurement workshop, which I attended via Zoom. And on the 20th, Mr. Lawrence and I met with TELUS, 2 representatives from TELUS. And there are a few things that I found out from them. They did, they put fiber in at Esowista back in November. And so now there should not be that dead zone at Long Beach anymore. I haven't tested it myself, but that's what they said, that they installed it in November. Because Long Beach used to be that, you know, every call got dropped when you were there.
Withdrawn.
Councillor Mafty just complained about TELUS, but his mic was not on.
I have had a call
No
dropped
swag for you
in
next
that zone within the last week.
I'm gonna go home. My internet's cut off. That's it.
So at Long Beach?
Yeah, I was on the phone coming back from Long Beach. Trust me, hands free, and completely lost it.
You really should keep
just
your
about at
hands on the
Esowista.
wheel.
Wow, interesting. The other interesting thing was that Rogers / Shaw recently kept their promise to light up Souk to Port Renfrew with Wi-Fi, and so TELUS is going to co-locate on their towers with their equipment. And at the AVICC trade show, we noticed at the Rogers booth that there was a map, and it showed our Highway 4 in red as one of their future projects. So I'm going to invite a rep from Rogers to come and talk to us and tell us what their plans are, because they have succeeded doing Souk to Port Renfrew. So that could be good for us for Highway 4. And that's it for my meetings. Any questions for me? Okay. Question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions about matters within Council's jurisdiction. Representations about matters that have been the subject of a public hearing are not permitted at this time. Are there any questions from the audience? Mr. Larson, come up to the microphone, please. Is your microphone on?
There. Okay.
Thank you.
So the rezoning, I mean the zoning on the zone that we have now at 1351 Eba Road, and as was explained earlier how it happened, when I was on council for 26 years, the policy of council at the time was that the harbour front be used for industrial and commercial use as opposed to residential. So that's always been the policy of council, and I don't know, I hope it still is, that they be considered first. So now that you have given permission to Neptune, which I approve, I've spoken to the planner about him expediting that. I know he's expediting that rezoning, and I'm asking to be conjoined with that so that these two lots next to each other get rectified sooner than the other 12 or whatever it is that's a problem along there. But just to back up why it's necessary, I'd like to give you a little historical background. I've been in Ucluelet for 52 years. In the first 3 years of my being in business, I was at 1295 Eba Road, which is where the Esso gas station used to be. And in the last 48 years or so, I've been at 1351 Eba Road. And before that piece of property, I'm the third owner. The first owner was Fraser, George Fraser. The next owner was a man by the name of Johnson, who was a blacksmith at McMillan Bodell. And he, in fact, was building a building and a set of marine ways there when I bought it, and I tore it down and built my shop. So you can see that for perhaps 60 years, the intended use of that piece of property has been exactly what I'm doing on it. And so if you go the next lot over, which is Neptune, and they've been there about 40 years doing industrial use. The next lot over, which is Ucluelet Ice, was actually Prince Rupert Fishermen's Co-op, and it's only the second owner there now. It was there when I came to Ucluelet, so that particular plant's been there for, I'm estimating, about 65 years. And then you go to the next lot, which is where the Esso station was, and the wharf is there, and the marine way is still there. It's not active at the moment. You go to the fuel dock, which used to be a fish plant, and it was there when I got here too. So it's been there for 65 years or so, that particular plant. And so the block 1200 and 1300 of Eba Road have historically, obviously, not been residential, and I have no idea. Well, I explained earlier how it became legal non-conforming, and so that was 25 years ago that happened. So a lot of time has gone on. We need, with all due respect, to rectify this problem sooner than later. I'm not getting any younger, and I need to get this resolved in the next little while. So I'm hoping that the planning department, you can encourage the planning department. I'm sure they don't need it, but to get this rectified as quickly as possible. Now you've given Neptune a temporary use, and I heard 3 years being mentioned. Well, I'm not waiting 3 years, so I don't know if I need to do anything else except hopefully have you give planning permission to move a little quicker. I noticed in the official community plan, the color for my piece of property in Neptune had changed, and it looked encouraging that in fact the plan is to have us into industrial. But I'm hoping that you won't have it on the black burner for very much longer. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson, and we'll try not to put any red dots through your property either.
Yeah, no. Well, actually, I think they're all yellow dots, if I remember right. And just back to that for a minute. The planner encouraged these circles, and there was about 50 people there, and they were all very enthusiastic. They do circles around particular areas, and then people started putting these dots on, which, of course, it was just supposed to be a planning process, not a process to create anything. And so somehow I sat at the table. I don't remember any motions that caused anything to happen, but somewhere in the process, this occurred, and I know it's been a problem for the planning department ever since. And I was a little amazed to see that even over in a residential area, there was a problem with a duplex, and obviously somebody put a dot on that side to cause that problem. But thanks for listening to me.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the audience that would like to speak? Mr. Rotenberg, are there any questions by Zoom or telephone?
Please click the raise your hand icon if you'd like to ask a question. Or *9 if you're attending by phone. No hands are raised at this time.
Thank you. And have we received any questions by email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Then we will adjourn this meeting at 5:51. Oh, the gavel! I got a gavel. That's right. Woo!
That's what I call it.
Do I need to disclose this as a gift now?